I'll admit it. A little trouble staying focused here today. We've got a great show, a really important perspective and information. But in the background of my thoughts today are the USDA reports. Yeah, that's it. USDA reports. Oh, and it's opening day for baseball. The boys of summer are back. And the Cyclones.
Live from Good Thursday via Farm Journal broadcast, this is AgriTalk. This morning we begin with a conversation with Dan Basse from AgResource Company. Then it's a full seg with Greg Henderson from Drovers. And later, Terry Johnston from Farm Rescue. I'm a handsome newsman, Davis Michelson, and now the host of AgriTalk, Chip Flory.
Did you see how Big Apple Joe had enough there?
Yeah.
Cut me off. I was going to say the Cyclones. I might have just a touch of March Madness going today, too, dude.
You got a little madness. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You got the mad hoops disease is what you got there.
Yeah, baby.
It's no good.
Whoa.
No good.
I mean, all across the middle of the country, Iowa and Illinois getting ready to face off.
Oof.
It's going to be a blast tonight. We got to wait until, just after 9 o'clock tonight before they throw the ball in the air and we tip things off. But, and it's the game's in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they throw the ball up at 10 after 10?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either. Those
cruel.
East Coasters.
Seems
Those
cruel.
East Coasters, they're just crazy.
Well, I can tell you how we do it here in Kansas City, in the heart of the country.
Oh, do it in the middle of the day.
At 3:10 p.m., we're going to face the Minnesota Twins for our season opener.
There you go.
It's going to be fantastic. We got opening day today. It's a beautiful day in Kansas City.
See, and that's the other thing. Normally, it would be day baseball for the Cubs on opening day.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we're playing the world champion, Texas Rangers, and we got to wait until tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to have to watch the whole ring ceremony and all that crap before they actually throw the first pitch.
Mm-hmm.
But enough of the complaining.
I've already got some Royals
day.
tickets. It is.
Yeah.
It is. We got prospective plantings report. We got the thing with the grain.
Quarterly grain stocks report.
Yeah,
That's it.
What did I say? Is that
the
is that
thing
what I
with
said?
the grains? Yeah,
That sounds like me. Yeah.
yeah. So we'll get some perspective on that from Dan Basse coming up here in just a little bit.
Oh, good.
Greg Henderson, we would normally have him on here in the first segment. We're going to hold him off until we get to the bottom of the hour because
we need to go deeper with Greg today.
Yes, there is a lot happening in the cattle industry right now, and I want to get Greg in here for talking. I want to dig a little deeper into what is going on. And then Farm Rescue, really cool organization helping farm families out across the country. Terry Johnston is the development officer there. He's got some news on expansion of services and a big effort that they've got underway right now. So we'll wrap things up with Terry at the end of the show.
Sounds great.
All right, buddy. Let's do it. Let's get to the news.
Well, let's start with the weather. Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky. Rainy, stormy weather continues along the East Coast through today, lingering in New England Friday. Unsettled weather for the west with a late-season atmospheric river impacting California Friday. Warming trend begins over the central U.S. today. That atmospheric river, Chip, we've heard that term before, and it doesn't bring good stuff, does it?
It turns into feet of snow in the mountains. It turns into mudslides at lower elevations and flooded streets along the coast. So, something we need to watch.
U.S. markets will trade normal hours today, except for the bond market, which will close at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. U.S. financial and commodity markets will be closed Friday in observance of Good Friday, but U.S. government offices will be open. And as we said, USDA will release its prospective plantings and quarterly grain stocks reports at 11 a.m. Central Time today. Much of the pre-report attention is on planting intentions, but quarterly stocks have proven to be strongly market moving, especially for corn.
Yeah.
Analysts expect March 1 stocks of 8.427 billion bushels for corn, 1.828 billion bushels for beans, and 1.044 billion bushels for wheat.
Yeah, we'll find out from Dan what a bullish number would look like, what a bearish number would look like
Ooh.
from the grain stocks.
Federal officials told Maryland lawmakers that replacing the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore would cost at least $2 billion, this according to Bloomberg. President Joe Biden said on Tuesday the federal government should pay for the rebuild, and he'd work with Congress on that. Debris from the collapsed bridge is blocking the shipping channel connecting the port to the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. Remains of the bridge must be cleared before the port can begin operations, which experts say could take months, Chip.
You know, when you compare spending $2 billion on this bridge to some of the other things that the federal government is spending $2 billion on, it sounds like a heck of a deal.
Yeah,
Spend the money.
Is like, I don't know how we're going to pay for this. We'll figure it out somehow. Really?
Yeah, whatever.
Really?
Build the bridge.
Build the bridge.
Build the bridge.
Secretary Tom Vilsack told House ag lawmakers recently that no matter how much Congress tries, USDA's tracking of China's farmland buys in the U.S. will always be wanting. China's U.S. farmland buys and its nefarious hacking, IP thefts of seed genetics, and data breaches have raised U.S. concerns to a fever pitch and prompted recent sanctions against CCP actors. But Secretary Vilsack warns there's just so much USDA can do to track Beijing's buys of U.S. farmland. He had this to say.
No matter how much money you give us, it will always be imperfect for this reason. There are over 3,000 county recorder offices around the country. Every county has a recorder office. It would require us to have a centralized database where every real estate transaction would be essentially put into a database to look at.
A lot to hold together in figuring all that out, Chip.
Come on.
Huh? What?
There are there are millions of people paying attention to this. If we don't, if the crowd doesn't know who the buyer is on a piece of ground, I think they can raise a few flags and say, hey, we need to figure this one out and see who the real buyer is on this one. Yeah. Come on. It should not be that difficult.
All right. On another note, meteorologists at AccuWeather are warning citizens and businesses to start preparing now for what could be a potentially busy tropical storm season that may have major impacts in the U.S. The 2024 Atlantic hurricane season forecast is calling for 20 to 25 named storms. 8 to 12 of those storms are forecast to strengthen into hurricanes. 4 to 6 storms could directly impact the United States. And let's go to this here. USDA will invest up to $22 million in partnerships that expand access to conservation technical assistance for livestock producers and increase the use of conservation practices on grazing land. The Natural Resources Conservation Service is accepting proposals through its Grazing Lands Conservation Initiative until May 26. NRCS Chief Terry Cosby says, quote, privately owned grazing lands cover nearly 30% of the national landscape, which means we have a tremendous opportunity to conserve natural resources through voluntary private lands conservation. Chip?
Gotta be voluntary. There's no question about that.
Indeed.
And raising beef, running those mama cows with and calves on pasture that is properly managed is one of the most environmentally favorable ways of raising protein.
Preach.
You know, so yeah, it should be pretty simple to push that agenda forward. All we got to do is tell the story of what's happening time and time again across cattle country. All right, good stuff, Davis.
Thanks,
we got
man.
Dan Basse, AgResource Company, up next.
In the morning, you're coffeeed up and you're thinking. In the afternoon, you've calmed down, but you're still thinking. We're here all day. AgriTalk.
Today is the day that the grain markets have been prepping for since basically the middle of January.
Opening day.
Since maybe not opening day. Might not even be the Cyclone Illinois game coming up tonight.
Although it might be.
It might be. Yeah, we don't want to rule that out. The madness is real. Madness is real. No, ever since we get the DS1 quarterly grain stocks report in January, the annual production summary at the end of the month, those two things in particular. But the winter wheat seedings, we need to include that in the conversation too. That comes at the end of January. Once you get that, then it is nothing but anticipation of the prospective plantings report and the March 1 quarterly grain stocks report. And we get those reports today. So let's do a little bit of extra preview work on it. Dan Basse, AgResource Company, is here to help us do that. Dan, it's great to talk with you. How are you?
I'm fine, but you're probably not going to like me being an Illinois boy, but we'll leave it at that, okay?
I knew it. Of course. No, that's fine. I mean, we welcome all sorts onto
as long as the Cyclones
Dan.
win. I know. Go ahead. Anyway.
Gonna be a great game. I hope.
It is.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Let's start with the acreage numbers because at least leading up to the release of the reports, that's where the focus is. That's where the spotlight is. And we start to get some ideas about it at the end of, or in February from the USDA Ag Outlook Forum, where the chief economist's office said 91 million for planted corn acres. But the average pre-report trade estimate, according to a survey by Reuters, 91.776. So about 750,000 more than what USDA indicated in February. What makes sense to you, Dan?
We're about in that area. We're at 91.5, so we're not far away. That's down about, close to 3 million acres from last year. And so that shift of losing corn probably goes to beans. So we have beans at 86.5, which I think is close to what the average trade estimate is.
Yep.
So, the reason maybe for the shift from the Outlook Forum is we had such a good fall and the winter was nice and people got down anhydrous. So I think as people did their surveys, farmers said, hey, I put down a little more nitrogen because the weather was right. And that may show up in the seedings estimates today for corn.
Dan, the conversation is also around profitability. Which market is offering more revenue, more profit per acre? The conversation happens, but in reality, how much does that really move acres?
I've gone back over my career, which is like 44 years, and we tried to move into acreage estimates relative to profitability. It doesn't work that way very well.
Yeah.
I always say that because there's other tugs and pulls on our pocketbooks. This year, farmers, because of low prices and values that are not fully ensuring it's the whole crop's production, as we look at crop insurance rates this year, you got about 81% of the crop insured. That's different from last year's 99%. And so with that in mind and interest rates higher, farmers are indicating they do want to plant the cheaper crop, soybeans, even though the corn may be producing just a little bit more margin. Soybeans seem to come up in discussions more frequently, especially when I do this work. There's two areas of the country that really come out to me as where the shifts happen. They're in the Delta and they're in the Northern Plains. Those are the fringe swing areas. And so if you really want to get acreage estimates right, if you get those areas right, we in the Midwest, we may jostle a little between corn and beans, but in the end, we kind of keep things the same.
Okay. The combined number that you gave us here between the 91.5, 86.5, 178 million acres of corn and soybeans across the Midwest. Well, across the country, not just the Midwest.
Yeah,
across
everywhere.
the country. How does that compare to where we have been in the past?
Well, it's down about 1 million acres from last year, a little less than that. So, when you think about where we're at, it's been really, really hard to get over 180 million acres total farmed corn and bean acres in the U.S. And so we kind of think that's the ceiling, if you will. So we can move acres back and forth, but I always say 179 and 180 are really good years if you have profitability to get acreage up to those levels. We're not there this year. So 178 seems right. I wouldn't even be surprised that we end up somewhere at 177 when we get the final number in June. But for today's report, it'll probably be a scotch either side of 178.
What role has the cotton? I was going to say the cotton market. I just want to put it this way. What role does cotton play in divvying up these acres?
Well, if you remember my discussion about the Delta, right, how important it
Yep.
is. And last year, the Delta farmer planted a lot of corn. Corn down there was up 14%. This year, I don't want to call it the white gold, but it's a little more profitable than it's been. Cotton acres will be up 1 million acres at about 11.3 by our survey. So 1 million acres or nearly 10% extra cotton relative to last year in the Delta. And that is taken away from corn. And then we find people planting a few more soybeans down there. And that's how we get the down 3 million acres of corn, along with a little bit of help in the Northern Plains.
Okay. That's one of the heavier cotton acreage estimates that I've heard, Dan.
Well, I think the average, let me just see here. I think the average is at 11.1. So I think we're in the neighborhood. But, we'll watch that number very carefully. The low range in S cotton was 10.4, the high is 13. We've got a big spread on cotton acreage, Chip. So, we're coming in at 11.3 or 11.4. We're kind of in the middle of that. But there is some big disparity in what people think on cotton acres compared to other crops.
Okay. So in 35 minutes, when we get the prospective planting report, let's imagine corn number is 91.8. Bean number is in at 86.5, right in line with trade expectations. What do the markets do?
Well, if that's the case, I don't think the markets would do a lot. I think the market's relatively short. We then kind of sit back and say, okay, what's going to be the planting weather and where are we going in terms of supply? But, the surprises historically in this report have mostly come from stocks, not from seedings. Seedings are important, but the one that we analysts really struggle with over the years has been stocks.
Okay. So we also get the quarterly grain stocks report. This is as of March 1. Trade expectations, Davis had them in the news. Wheat as of March 1, stocks in all positions, 1.044 billion bushels. Corn, 8.427 billion bushels. Soybeans, 1.828 billion bushels. Are we looking at corn numbers first?
Yeah, no, I think corn is the right thing to focus on. And so, we're 1 billion bushels in stocks over where we were last year, which makes sense relative to the crop. If we think about 8.43 in terms of end stocks, it's the largest corn end stock since 2018, so it's a big pile. It's really going to give us confirmation. Did USDA's record corn yield that they gave us in January, is it going to be borne out in this stocks number? And so if we're below 8.2, the market's going to kind of look at it and say, well, maybe that crop wasn't the record, and maybe Nebraska yields didn't go up 9 bushels an acre as indicated in January. If it's 8.4 or 8.6, they're going to say, oh, yeah, it was a big crop, and the market probably won't like it.
Right. Okay. And I should mention this, too, Dan. This afternoon, 2 o'clock Central Time, we get the quarterly hogs and pigs report. I mean, this is an important report for not only for the hog market, but for the grain market as well, isn't it?
No, we want to make sure our consumptive base is there. When you look at feed usage over the last quarter, which we use as analysts to get into the corn number, we are estimating we fed on the average trade guess about 1.55 billion bushels of corn. That's up 114 million bushels from last year. Now, there's always this thing called residual, the statistical slush factor that we analysts struggle with. But in saying so, it would say that we need good numbers on hogs and cattle and poultry and dairy animals, and that they made money and they kind of kept their consumption moving higher.
Right. Absolutely. The bottom line from today, though, is it has a history of generating some additional volatility for the grain trade, doesn't it?
It does. We really struggle with this group of numbers. It is the biggest report of late winter spring. We won't get another big one like this till we get the May WASDE and we start including new crop balance sheets. But this is a kahuna today. We somehow need to figure out where indeed corn stocks are, in particular where corn seedings are. If I come up with a corn seedings number of 93 or 93 and a half, the market's not going to like it. So we've got large stocks. We're trying to see how big is big and make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's how these acreage intentions line up compared to a year ago. It's important. That is important. But guys, you got to compare it to the trade expectations going into the report to really figure out how the market might react. So, Dan, great stuff. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Be well. Have a great holiday weekend, and good luck with the reports, everyone.
All right. Can I say this one last thing real quick? I got to say it. Yeah, go Cyclones.
Oh, no, stop that. Anyway, we're going the other way, but we're hopeful for the Cubs this year. We'll see what happens.
There you go.
Well.
Time for Markets Now with the experts from Pro Farmer.
Joining us now, Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady. Looks like pre-report positioning to me. Some slight gains in wheat. We've got the soy complex under pressure and slight gains in corn.
Yeah. So mild corrective buying in both the corn and wheat markets, like you mentioned, about 1 to 2 cents higher in most of those contracts in both of the markets, and nothing more than that. Just waiting on to see what USDA has in store in terms of planting intentions and the March 1 stocks. And historically, this one's been a pretty volatile report, so we'll see what happens at the top of the hour. But the soy complex, like you mentioned, just can't find any traction right now. 9 to 12 cents lower in beans and $4 or $5 lower in meal at the moment.
Yeah, that $4 to $5 loss in the meal market is kind of being an anchor on everything in the soy complex right now. I don't think there's any question about that. So, yeah, we just got to get these numbers. Let's get the anticipation out of the market, put the numbers in front of the traders, and then let's decide which way the market's going to go after that. All right, take us over to the livestock trade. We got some strength in the cattle complex.
Yeah, so live cattle futures, it's been a really rough week. So the first 2 days just got absolutely hammered and clawed a little bit back yesterday and trying to get a little bit more back today. So, but all things considered, it's still down sharply for the week and indications of the short-term tops in the futures, the cash cattle market, and box beef at the moment. Kind of a mixed tone in feeders here at mid-morning, and then mixed in hogs as well, with the front end of the market higher on support from rising cash.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. That is Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady on Markets Now.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. You're listening to AgriTalk, where the conversation begins. Join us at 855-4-TALK-AG.
Yeah, if you've got any questions about what's going on in the cattle industry right now, now's a good time to pick up the phone and give us a call. You can also send us a tweet. If you do, include hashtag AgriTalk in it. You can also send us an email, host@agritalk.com. Now, normally on Thursdays in our opening segment, we have Greg Henderson, editorial director at Drovers, on, and Greg and I discuss a factor in the cattle industry that the market seems to be paying attention to. But, dude, Greg, there's so much going on right now in the cattle industry. I'm glad that you could make an adjustment and come with us for a full segment today. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Chip. I appreciate it. And yes, there is a lot going on.
Holy smokes, is there ever? I want to start with something that Brian Grady just said, kind of the trifecta. He said the way the market is trading this week, we've got at least a short-term high in the futures market, at least a short-term high in the cash market, at least a short-term high in the box beef market. That is something that the cattle market participants have been watching for, have been flagging for, and saying, good grief, watch out. We could, if it happens, we need to be prepared for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly the futures market has shown us there's a lot of volatility there. And if you're a cattle feeder, there's a lot at risk right now. Their costs are much higher than they have been before. It's just it's certainly a time when we're getting concerned about beef demand too. And I think those concerns play into what we saw in the futures market earlier this week.
Yeah. We got that cattle on feed report last Friday. Placements came in up 9.7% from a year ago in February. And the trade was looking for something like a 6.5% increase. I don't know if that was the reason or if it was the simple fact that the cash market had traded to a new all-time high on average, according to USDA, or what it was. But boy, it just chased the buyers out of the market for the first 2 days this week, didn't it?
Well, it did. And we need to think about how the industry has changed over the last, say, 10 years, and changed because we have more of the larger feed yards. And I'm going to say corporate feed yards are playing too. Those people, those yards tend to gather cattle and run them on grass. And there may not actually be a feeder cattle transaction that corresponds with the date that they're placed. They may have been on grass, they may have been on winter pastures, whatever. So anyway, there's more of that going on than we saw 10 years ago.
Right. Absolutely.
And that Chip, that has an effect on the profitability as well. So I know that you've mentioned the profit tracker that we publish on Drovers, and Nalivka has them making feed yards made about $125 a head last week. Okay. Well, I know that some of the cattle didn't make any money last week, and some of them made more than that. But that's an industry average. But again, it goes back to the way the procurement, what percentage of cattle are actually being bought at that feeder cattle price of $255 per hundredweight. So a lot of factors at play, a lot of different, types of flexibility for these feed yard and margin operators.
Right. Including the cost of gain.
Wow.
I mean, what a difference from a year ago, right?
So yes, the total cost of feeding a steer, according to Nalivka's calculations, are down 38. The feed costs are down 38%.
Yeah.
The total cost, however, is up 17%, and it costs over $2,500 a head to buy that steer and feed him. So you've got interest rates obviously are playing a larger role. Yeah. That feeder steer up 28% compared to a year ago. A lot of volatility, and there's a lot at risk there for those feed yards. And the saving grace has been that decline in feed costs. That's not good for corn farmers, but it is good for cattle feeders.
Yep, that's right. Monday morning right away, the Oklahoma City sale barn had their regular feeder cattle auction. It looked like that cash market, was off $3, something like that on the 7-weight steers. I don't know if that is carried over to the rest of the plains or not, Greg. It seems to me other areas and areas north of Oklahoma City, it felt like a fairly steady market, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did feel like a steady market, but the old saying is the cure for high prices is high prices, right?
Yes.
So it reached a point where, feed yards and backgrounders are looking at that and saying, I've got to back off a little bit, because the economists I've talked to are telling me, the cow-calf operator is doing really well right now in this stage in the cycle, but the margin operator, especially those backgrounders, are really getting squeezed. And these high, the price of the cattle is the biggest factor in that as well. The other thing we need to consider, Chip, is that drought concerns have not gone away.
Right.
And, we're looking at a time where we're seeing, I've talked to people in Kansas and Oklahoma. I drove through Kansas last week. It's getting dry again. We had some winter moisture, but that drought threat has not gone away.
Right. Okay. I want to hit a couple of other items here. Monday, we got word that USDA was going to come with a press release about this mysterious disease that was into the dairies in Kansas, in Texas. Talk about it being in New Mexico as well. Well, they did. They confirmed that it is the high path avian influenza has gotten into the dairy herds. There's some dairy herds. It seems like there was a reaction in the cattle market to that word as well. out of concern that some of the dairy herds were going to be liquidated or something like that. Did you hear that or see that?
That rumor seemed to fuel those futures reaction.
Yeah.
Maybe it was, I've talked to people on both sides of that question, but it seems like it was an opportunity to take a pause in this market, right? More, and it was based on not on knowledge, but on fear of the unknown and the uncertainty. And so, I've had some people tell me the futures market did its job when it did that. Now, based on where you're at in the market, you may or may not agree with that, but at least, the market, as we know, do not like uncertainty. And that certainly provided at least 24 hours or 48 hours of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen, but it seems to have smoothed out. The fears are subsiding. We know it's not a problem for consumers of either pasteurized milk or properly cooked beef, right?
Right. Yeah, it is. Consumers should not be afraid of what has happened with the HPAI getting into the dairies. But if consumers show concern over the safety of the product, I get it. The market probably needs to make some kind of an adjustment because of that. So the uncertainty or the risk of it is very real. Very real. Okay.
So maybe some other things that happened this week, like that bridge collapse in Baltimore.
Yep.
Those are, pushing this HPAI news to the second and third page.
Exactly. Okay. One other one that I want to get to here real quick. Something that I think there was widespread agreement among cattlemen, cow-calf producers, beef organizations, cattle organizations, everybody, was they really didn't like the idea of reopening the U.S. beef market to chilled, frozen, fresh beef from Paraguay because of the uncertainty over their FMD status. And the Senate is trying to do something and stop the reopening of the market. That's good news, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you name the last time, Chip, that the entire beef industry has agreed on something?
No, I can't.
Mean, that's like getting Democrats and Republicans to agree on something. But hopefully our Democrats and Republicans in the House will agree with what the Senate did and pass the same resolution. And hopefully, if they have the same margins they had in the Senate, it will be veto proof from the president, right?
Right.
Absolutely. We need to stop that reopening of Paraguayan beef to the United States because they just don't have the same inspection and regulations that we do. They're still vaccinating for FMD. However, American consumers need to be aware that we have the safest beef in the world, and we just hope Congress will step up and make sure that continues.
Yep, that's exactly right. The beef supply is safe. There's no question about that. And this action by the Senate is going to help to keep it that way. We just don't want to have to deal with a foreign animal disease coming into the country. The last thing we want to do is import something like that. Henderson, good stuff, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks, Chip.
You bet. Greg Henderson, editorial director at Drovers. Terry Johnston, Farm Rescue, up next.
AgriTalk is brought to you by Acuron. Discover 5 to 15 more bushels per acre with Acuron corn herbicide. Acuron is a restricted-use pesticide.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. Glad that you are with us on this Thursday morning. Getting ready for the USDA reports coming our way in about 10 minutes. But first, let's get an update from the fine people at Farm Rescue. Terry Johnston is the development officer there at Farm Rescue. He joins us right now. Terry, it's great to talk with you again. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Chip. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Glad that you are here. You've been on before, Terry, but I want to make sure that everybody understands what farm rescue is. So give me the 30-second elevator on farm rescue.
Yeah, so we're a 501c3 nonprofit volunteer organization that helps family farms in crisis. A crisis can be health, it can be an injury, it can be a natural disaster, anything that's impeding them from getting their crop planted, harvested, their hay being baled, livestock being fed. So we offer volunteers and equipment to help a family farm or ranch through a tough time.
Well, and I just in addition to that, one of the things that I've has been part of the conversation when I'm talking with others about farm rescue is, yes, for those that need the assistance, it's an awesome organization. But for those that hear about a problem and feel like they have to do something to help out in a region, farm rescue is where those people that want to volunteer and help out, they can reach out to farm rescue, and farm rescue is going to find a way for those people to help, right?
Yeah, we have a very strong database full of farm rescue volunteers from all over the country. In fact, I think we have one from every state except for, I think it's Delaware. So we've got over 600 volunteers in a network across the country. They come from all over, and it's a simple process. They can go to our website, which is farmrescue.org, sign up. Just let us know what their strengths are, what they like to do, when they might be available, and we'll put them to work as soon as we can.
Outstanding. Okay, couple of updates that we need on farm rescue. Number one, your footprint's getting bigger. Terry, tell us about that.
Yeah, so to date, we serve 8 states: North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and Illinois. And as of this summer, we are adding Wisconsin to that list. So we'll be helping families in Wisconsin starting this fall with harvest. And then, of course, next spring, we'll be helping with planting and some of the other things that we do. So we're very excited about that. We want to get the word out to the farm and ranch families in Wisconsin. If there's a need, reach out. And I would say if you know of a family that needs help, let us know. Most people won't ask if they need it, and so most of our families come to us by referral. So if you know of someone, again, it's easy to go to farmrescue.org and let us know that.
Yeah. And please understand that when a rep from Farm Rescue shows up, they're going to be very mindful of the situation that an operation that is in need. They will be very understanding and make it as simple and as easy on that family as possible. Correct?
That is a correct statement. Our operation folks are amazing, and they'll assess with the family what the needs are.
Yep.
Come up with a plan. We have wonderfully trained volunteers. We have excellent equipment. We can help them do a great job with whether it's planting or harvesting or livestock feeding, so they can, with confidence, know that we are going to be there to help, and we can be as discreet as they would like us to be, relative to
right.
awareness of
Yeah,
sure.
That's awesome. Okay. What's going on right now? Because the wildfires in Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas probably created a little bit of work for you, didn't it?
It did. We don't traditionally serve Texas and Oklahoma. We do Nebraska, but cattle organizations and so forth reached out, and we don't like to say no. So we have enacted what we call Operation Hay Lift, and so we are hauling hay to families in Nebraska and Oklahoma and Texas who have been affected by these wildfires. We've got a great list of people who have volunteered to donate hay, and we've had several families reach out. I think around 10 families so far in Nebraska, 2 families in Texas that have requested our assistance to haul them hay. So we want to get the word out. If there are folks in those areas that are needing help, or they know of a family that is needing help, please have them reach out to to Farm Rescue. They can donate hay, they can donate dollars, or they can refer a family or apply for assistance. And we don't want anybody to miss out on this great offering here.
Right. What about truck drivers? If I've got a CDL, can you use me?
Yes, please. Yeah, you can go to our website and apply to be a volunteer. CDL drivers are very important to us, whether it's hauling grain at harvest time or whatever. Mm-hmm. But definitely in a situation like this, if they would like to call and sign up, yep. We've got the trucks, we've got the hay. We need drivers and families awesome. That could use it. Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, springtime of the year. You mentioned it earlier, planting. If you know someone out there that is struggling with an illness in the family or anything that's going to get in their way of getting a crop planted, now's the time to reach out to Farm Rescue for that family, right?
That is correct. We are taking applications for the planting season. And again, whether there's an immediate need for themselves or they know a family that may need the help, and even if they're not sure, make sure to let us know. We can help get them on a list, and if they turns out they don't need us, that is fine too. We'll be glad to help. They can go to farmrescue.org/apply and put that information in there. Absolutely.
farmrescue.org/apply for that. And if you just want more information on Farm Rescue, farmrescue.org will get you started there. Terry, it's a great organization. Thanks for coming on and giving us an update. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks as always, Chip. Appreciate you.
You bet. Terry Johnston, Development Officer at Farm Rescue. Come back this afternoon. I'm going to have a conversation with Chad Hart from Iowa State. We'll break down the USDA reports and put some analysis on the numbers right here on AgriTalk.